Miles Morales stands before Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. The young man is very nervous, especially when they call him by his real name. The two explain they are here as a professional courtesy of sorts, explaining how Jessica was hired by Miles' grandmother after his grades were slipping. Though Miles is quite unhappy about all of this, Jessica is actually doing him a huge favor. She won't tell Miles' grandmother about his secret life as Spider-Man, but it should be noted how easily Jones was able to discover this fact. She didn't even know to look for it, and found out in only 2 hours. It's all a bit too much for Miles, who takes a moment to shout at the sky. The two older heroes are encouraging to him, explaining that they checked around. Sam Wilson vouched for Miles, saying that the young man seems destined to be one of the greats, but he has a long way to go. Jessica also explains how Miles' mother Rio tried to help her son, which has impressed all three of the heroes. Miles then remembers the call from Tony and says he has to go, which surprises Luke, who is a little hurt he wasn't called in too. Before Miles leaves, Cage has one last message for him. Spider-Man is a kid of color. That's cool. That's important. Don't screw it up. And with that, Miles takes off. He hitches a ride with Nova, also on the way, and meets up with a massive group of heroes. They are all informed about a vision concerning Bruce Banner and the deal that has been made between Carol and Tony. Things are still very tense between the two, making the young heroes, Miss Marvel and Nova, quite uncomfortable. Miles tries to calm them down. Nothing's gonna happen. Nothing at all. An hour later, Bruce Banner lay dead before them. It gets pretty crazy after this. Tony rants at Carol, and Miles catches the eye of Ulysses, the cause of all of this. Nova listens to Stark and thinks he's coming around to Tony's side, and Miles is quick to agree. The ride home is quiet. Kamala isn't taking this well, having never seen anything quite like it before. She starts to cry while Nova and Spider-Man panic over what to do. Not sure what to say, Miles simply holds Kamala's hand. Nova joins in. Meanwhile, Tony laments. They just killed somebody over the idea of something maybe happening. Who knows who is next? And now Banner's dead. Steve Rogers tries to calm his friend down, but Miles says he's right. Who is next? Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is my recap and review of Spider-Man number 8. Alright, well, this comic is pretty much a home run, at least for me. And I'm not saying it's just for me to preliminarily defend myself against those who don't like it. It's very much the sort of comic that really works for me, but only because I've read enough of Bendis' work, I'm familiar with Miles, the other characters here, the details of Civil War II, and I happen to pretty much like the entire cast of characters and the general stuff being explored in this piece. It's subjective as always, but one of those times where it's just, yes, this comic is for me, tailor-made for me, so of course I like and recommend it. But if you don't like these things, then you're not gonna like it. And that's fine, it's not a big deal, it just happens to really mash with what I like in comics. First, we get a familiar trend of writers using characters from other works they've done showing up in their latest story. Bendis does this a lot, but so do most prolific comic book writers. Hickman, Remender, John, Snyder, Morrison, it's par for the course for them all, really. Now, this is done for many reasons. Not only do writers obviously have a good handle on characters they've written before, but it avoids the risk of screwing up other writers' stories. The writers also usually have a preference for these characters for a good reason anyways, as they generally play to the writer's own strengths. And it creates this fun atmosphere of continuity within continuity. So there's a certain Bendis legacy within Marvel, just like a certain Snyder legacy in DC, or many other authors' legacy. Here, that's really pronounced when Miles gets to have a full-on talk with Alias stars Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. And Bendis works his way around these three characters, two of which he's created, and the other one which he's written a lot with, the way you'd kind of expect, with a certain level of expertise. That conversation alone is so well done, so interesting, and so smart given the circumstances and how these three work together that it really holds up the entire issue as a whole. I thought things were going to wrap there, and I was totally satisfied with this issue from that alone. If the dialogue is interesting and entertaining, I have no problem with a comic entirely devoted to it, like this one is. The dialogue carries it, no problem. But things kept going and we got some even more solid material. Seeing some of the events around the Banner incident was great. Not only does it inform the Civil War II story a bit with little details that you're gonna have to read the comic if you want to get for yourself, but it was really touching. That moment where the three youngest Avengers hold hands after this big trauma, that's Bendis at his best. Brian Michael Bendis is a really interesting writer. I think the smaller the story is given, the better the job he can do. He's great at dialogue, has some of the best character work of any comic book writer ever, and can put together a small-scale action in a memorable way, but seems to struggle with larger events. Aside from the ongoing Civil War II, and that opinion can change, I don't usually like his bigger events, but stuff on a bit of a smaller scale, Ultimate Spider-Man, New Avengers, this, he nails moments like these, little human moments that really stick in your memory. I know it's a very simple moment, but it's so natural and human, it really means a lot to me. Compared to everything that's happened so far in Civil War II, this is by far the most grounded and moving thing I have seen, amongst funerals and mourning and grief. A lot of stuff that could be moving, but it's authentic moments like these, with these heroes given their age and what they just went through, that really work for me. A big part of why this is great definitely has to be Nico Leon's art. He nails every facial expression and even gives the fully costumed Miles lots of emotion through the lenses and a whole bunch of body language. And then we get to the very end of this comic, which also has a few interesting tidbits. Now, the way I reviewed these, I kind of went with Civil War II's new issue first, but this actually came out the week before, and that kind of explained things a little bit, because it has some pretty heavy hints for what happens in issue 5. Still, I'm kind of glad it worked out this way, because now we get to see how Bendis was hinting at this and doing it pretty well. Thus, we have Miles worrying about who's next, as is Tony, and little do they know, it's Miles himself. Which makes what's coming next in the world of Spider-Man super interesting, and I'm really looking forward to next issue. It's a solid comic through and through, without a doubt a top-of-the-line Civil War II tie-in. When Bendis is at his best, which he really is here, his comics work, and they work well. If you aren't, now is a good time to start reading this run of Spider-Man. Because you know what these little moments of humanity, of questioning morals, and finding your identity as a hero remind me of? Spider-Man. And no offense to Dan Slott, well, okay, some offense to Dan Slott, but I don't get that feeling that often these days. I mean, I kind of got hints of it last year in Renew Your Vows, and kind of have hope for some stuff coming out, but really, a lot of Peter Parker lately. This is more interesting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. I'm not sure if anyone likes this as much as I did, so feel free to voice your complaints. Lord knows they should probably be somewhere on this page, I just don't seem to see them here. I like this comic too much to really be looking for problems. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.